Hello and welcome. This video will be a review of the upcoming debut banner, Galtor. Just as a disclaimer, I will not be recommending new players to pull any debut banners until they have accumulated the core weapons for their main class or job. So if you've recently started playing, it is more efficient to spend sea crystals on Dragonkin banners, as they have 2 times rates and are job focused, meaning it's a lot easier to build up your grids. If you did miss Dragon, Heaven's Ocean banners and Startdash Gacha are also a consideration, especially if you're unsure what class you'd like to play, as they have weapons from each class. However, do note that because of this, they are quite diluted. With that being said, let's get started. So first up, we have Galtor Blade. This is an extreme physical damage greatsword nuke, which also gives us a 30% physical mitigation K buff, a 30% physical damage taken up debuff to a single target, and a 30% wind damage resistance debuff to ourselves. So what is this good for? Well, the mitigation buff lets us frontline better in physical battles. The physical damage taken up buff lets us do more damage, and it actually shares the same letter as Mitra. You can scroll up to here, Mitra, except it's a larger value of 30%, and it shares the same buff as Diasclo as well. Yeah, Diasclo is also 20%, so Galtor is currently the highest source of the C debuff. And so because of this, it makes it a strong addition to an Earth grid, as it boosts greatsword nuke damage. I would say that this is a good pull, especially if you are missing an Earth damage nuke. However, if you already have Rogue or Karat, Rogue's over here, Karat's sword here, so this is extreme damage and Rogue is FA massive, you can opt to skip Galtor Blade because the upcoming banners have a few really good weapons for Swordsman. So in 2 banners time, there's Lucha's sword, which is a K buffer, and also an RT extender. So K buffers boost our dual blade damage, and RT buffs are the buffs we get from our axes. So it's good to extend those. There's also Gloria, which is going to replace both any of our B buffers and our crit buffers, so stuff like Folia, Harp. This is basically 2 in 1, and so it's going to be a core weapon for Swordsman too. And Ostro Blade is another good one to save up for, so this one's in about 6 or 7 banners. And it's basically the first FA massive dark nuke greatsword. So yeah, if you're free to play, I would recommend skipping this Galtor Blade if you already have an Earth nuke. Next up, we have the shield. Let's go find it. Okay, so this shield, it's an Earth element shield, and it deals medium guarding damage to all enemies with its regular or normal cast on a 16-second cooldown. With Dragonkin cast, it also applies physical and magic damage dealt down debuffs to all enemies, and these are 20% value, and they last 60 seconds. And the W and X letters are unique letters, which means they stack with other damage dealt down debuffs. So you can decrease damage from enemies by quite a lot. You also get to obtain 3 times hate, so it's a decent way of grabbing hate. And it increases your Dragonkin gauge to 100%, which means you can use DK 1 more time, so double DK. But then it gives you this debuff, which stops you gaining any Dragonkin gauge for the next 7.9 seconds. This just means that you can't cheese a bunch of weapons with 100% Dragonkin gauge increase. But if you wait out the debuff duration, you can use another, so there's that. When you Dragonkin as well, the cooldown increases to 100 seconds, and the cast time increases to 1 second. So pretty much once you use this, you have an empty space in your grid. So because this shield requires you to actually DK it, to Dragonkin it to get maximum usage, it's better for longer battles, and so it's not really required for most content. And because of this, I'd recommend that free-to-play players skip it. It's a nice shield to have for long battles, but it's not core and you don't really need it. Okay, next up we have Galtor Cannon. So this is an Earth Element cannon, and it deals extreme physical damage to the target. and it provides additional effects depending on how many physical damage buffs it removes from you. So just the archer. If it removes if it removes 1 to 4, it will deal small damage, so it will have an extra bullet doing small damage for each buff removed, so up to 4 bullets. And if you remove 5 buffs, you will also apply these physical and magical damage dealt debuffs to one enemy, and these are both 50% each. So if we look at the letters F and H, this is basically the same as Earth Sniper, so it also gives the same debuffs. One thing to note is that Earth Sniper takes a bit longer to actually get proper use out of, because to guarantee these debuffs, you need to Dragonkin it. However, Earth Sniper is a bit safer as it's backline, whereas Galtor Cannon is a frontline weapon, which means you're going to be in a bit more danger using this. Another thing is that you need to get rid of all your buffs to apply this effect, and to do that you need to have set up buffs beforehand. So it's easier to do this in battles with set patterns, so battles such as Counter-Attacking Wasp are a good example. So it's not the best cannon to get, but it is okay, and especially if you're an archer and you're looking to pull the bow in this banner, it's okay as a side pull. So another thing to note is that because of the archer job passive, it means that when we use a cannon, all our allies will get 5% command skill power buff or CS buff, depending on the element of the cannon. So if we use an earth cannon, we'll get a 5% earth CS buff, which means they're not the worst as a supporting weapon. But yeah, not the best cannon to get, but it's an okay side pull if you are going for the bow in this banner. Alright, next weapon is the spear, so Galtor Lance. So this does special guardian magic damage to foes in the front row, large, and special guardian magic damage basically deals damage based on the higher of your magic or physical defense stat. So whichever of those two are higher, it will deal damage based on that. It also applies to physical and magical damage dealt down debuffs to foes in the front row. These are 10% each, and they share the same letters as Phantom Skull and Crystal Sphere, so G physical and G magical, and also the same debuff as Angel Feather with the same value. So this Angel Feather actually hits all enemies. So for Guardian, Angel Feather is better when there are enemies in both rows, not just the front row that you need to debuff. However, if there is a single target enemy, or a few enemies in the front row only, then Galtor can be better for Guardians, as it also gives an accuracy debuff to foes, 10%, and inverted scale buff as well, which is guaranteed for Guardians. It only obtains 70% hate, which means you're not going to grab as much hate, but you should have other weapons to grab hate with as well, so it's not too bad. For Clerics, however, it's quite risky to use this in the front row. I recommend just leaving these kind of debuffs to Guardians for most battles. But if you know the mechanics well, then you could probably utilize this too. But yeah, for free-to-play Clerics especially, it's not a required pool, and I would definitely recommend skipping. Next up, we have Galtor Scythe. So this is just, yeah, this one I would recommend skipping. So basically it applies a magic damage dealt up N and O buff, so total 20% for these two 10% buffs, and just the same in critical power, 20% buff as other Rainbow Scythes. These 20% buffs aren't as good offensively as debuff Scythes, such as Ibis, gives a 30% debuff to front row, Diascalo, and Glimmer. And it's also worse than Landra and Ignium, crit power buffs Scythes, as the magic damage buffs get diluted by your other magic damage buffs. Not a good scythe to go for. If you do, however, end up rolling it sometime in the future, for example on Dragonkin or Heaven's Ocean, it can be used if you're missing other offensive scythes. So it's better than the Holy Falcons as an example. All Rainbow Scythes are, as it gives a 20% critical power up instead of 10%. And if it's the only offensive scythe you have, then it is not too bad to use. But yeah, don't aim to pull this, and free to play, well, any mage should just skip this. And now we're up to the bow, which is the main weapon for this banner. So this is the core weapon, or the best in slot weapon for archers once it's released, and it gives G and E physical and magical damage taken up debuffs to a single foe, 20% value each, and these are the same debuffs as Angel Sparrow. So even though Angel does extreme damage as a debuffing tool, Galtor is going to replace Angel. And the reason is it gives these physical damage and O buffs to yourself. And these are great because once you have 5 physical damage buffs, you can pop off all your magic cannons, or most of the magic cannons. But basically magic cannons that are going to be useful, you will need to have 5 physical damage buffs to pop off with. And you get 2 from Galtor, and you can get another 3 from Shinnon. So Shinnon has A and C and B, so that's 3 physical buffs, plus 2 from Galtor, that gives you 5, and you can utilize cannons a lot more efficiently. So yeah, archers definitely should pull for this, especially if they want to use cannons in the future. Finally, the last weapon is our classical gear, which is the magic device. All it does is recover health, a large amount, and it also extends physical damage B, magic damage K, and critical rate A buffs. So these are basically swordsman buffs, and it extends these in the backline. So yeah, pretty mediocre magic device. There are a lot better options that are available to swordsman. However, if you do somehow pull this from a future banner, or if you decide to pull this banner for the for Galtor blade, the sword, it can be used if you have no other options for extending these buffs in the backline. But yeah, not recommended to pull this, but it's usable if you have nothing else to extend these buffs. And yeah, so that basically wraps up the Galtor banner. Hopefully this gives you a better idea on the weapons in the banner and whether or not you want to pull for them. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you all in the next video.